Hello and welcome to your Tuesday Twilight Show with me, Kyle Graham. Today we'll be discussing current affairs, tips for you heads of department, and much, much more. So I want to know, what are your tips for you heads of department starting in September? Tune in, talk it out. We are live.
Live from Warrington, this is the Twilight Show with Kyle Graham on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Hello. I am fully expecting this to probably be the quietest show of all time because we are streaming out today at the exact same moment that England are playing in the Euros. So if you've joined in today as a distraction for that, well then welcome. I do have it on my phone in front of me as well, just to kind of keep an eye on it, just in case I decide to poke fun. Obviously not England or anything, so yeah, it could be interesting. Welcome, folks, and happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Twilight Zone. How is everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing okay. Welcome to what is my final show today. Again, not a great time to have a final show, whatever. I imagine that many people will be tuning in to kind of, as I said, the England game. But you know what? We do what we can, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. So yeah, stepping aside today, after today, just I've got a lot of things on in the summertime. Got 2 weddings, and I have actually just on Sunday booked a trip to Ibiza. That's right, folks. I have booked a trip to Ibiza. Very excited about that one. No, by the way, not to the clubs. I am not the kind of person who would enjoy anything like that. I would have a terrible time in the clubs, unless it's a rock and metal club. I'd quite enjoy that, and I imagine in Ibiza there probably is. But yes, I am going to Ibiza. It's so much of a party that I'm going with my in-laws. That's how you can tell it's a party holiday. So yeah, booked in to go to that because let's face it, we've got a long summer ahead of us, folks. No problems there, and it is of course currently on the green list, which is good. So that's very exciting. And yeah, so essentially, I'm stepping aside because I've got a big summer ahead, and I've got a new job in September coming up as well. So just kind of a couple of things to kind of focus on. So I've got a couple of different questions for all of you wonderful human beings today. One, what are your top tips for new heads of department? So if there's a lot of people, it seems, moving into heads of department roles in September. I don't know if that's because people are kind of moving around schools, because obviously I think one of the things I've read about as is happening in not just the teaching profession, but in many professions, is apparently people didn't tend to move last year, essentially because a lot of people didn't want to move during a pandemic. They were working from home, so I thought it wasn't a good time to get to know people in the office. And I know a lot of people didn't want to move schools last year because it meant that you would be moving to a school which you couldn't actually have ever been in the building. And if anyone's ever moved jobs, you'll kind of obviously know the importance of getting into a building to kind of see what the building's like. So one of the key things if you're moving around in teaching is to go in and ask, if you're moving jobs, always ask to go out during a corridor transition, because normally a corridor transition is a pretty good temperature gauge of the routines and culture and expectations in the school. I would say, and walk around during lunchtime as well if you possibly can. That's always a really good way of doing it. And apparently, so because people couldn't do that, apparently there was a lot of there was limited movement in education last year as well. But I do know that that's not just education. It's like that. It's been across multiple different professions, because obviously I think people didn't move as well because it was like a new normal in many ways last year. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people have moved around this year. Maybe people have stepped down from heads of department roles because they haven't enjoyed the pressures of tags or whatever the case may be. But it does seem like we have an awful lot of people kind of, I guess, moving around at the minute. So if you've got any hints and tips or advice for people stepping into a role as a new head of department, then please do share, because obviously I think one of the things that I remember whenever I stepped into a head of department role back 7 years ago was Germany just nearly scored. Woof! Well, I remember when I said to the head of department role 7 years ago, I remember Googling relentlessly, like tips for new heads of department. And I remember there being such a limited amount of information out there. Because I suppose Twitter was just starting off, like back in the days where Tom Rogers maybe even only had 1,000 followers compared to his 17 billion followers now. Back in those days, there wasn't a huge amount out there. Now I think there's loads out there. But so let's share some hints and tips, folks. If there's any information that you guys have, any ideas that you guys have about what could help a new head of department get into their role, then please do share that, because I think that would be really useful for people to kind of hear from. And I want to hear from lots of different perspectives as well. So even if you've never been a head of department, you could kind of get involved in this and say, well, the kind of heads of department that I like working for are X, Y, and Z, and things like that. I'd be really, really interested to hear from all of the different ideas that people may have moving forward. What are your kind of favorite, what are the kind of traits of your favorite heads of department and things? Or if you've been a head of department, what do you think has worked and so on? If you're an aspiring head of department, what would you like to do, and so on and so forth. So it'd be really good if you guys could get in contact either on the Twitter, Wow, that immediately made me sound 70. I like to use Spotify to listen to music. And things. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's a really useful one to kind of get involved in. If you can message us on Twitter at TT Radio 2021, message me on Twitter at KTG_1990. I know, right? I'm only 30. I seem a lot younger. I appreciate that, folks. And just let us know, or of course get involved in the chat, or tune in, talk it out, folks. Get involved. Give us a call. Give us a call on the chat to let us know what are your top tips for heads of department. The second question I'm asking today, I got a couple of things on Twitter on this, and this is a bit more of a fun one. If you guys have been tuning in, if you guys are regular listeners of the Twilight Show with Kyle Graham, that's right. I even third person myself, like Dwayne Johnson. If it's good enough for The Rock, it's good enough for me. Best guy. My advice would, what I do is at the end of the show is I often do like a meal of the week kind of thing, like a kind of a meal suggestion of the week. So the question I put out there was, what is your signature dish? People listening into the show, is there a dish that you like, for example, that you cook when you're trying to show off for somebody? If you had a first date with somebody, or you had a date for somebody around at your house, what would you cook to show off? Or is there a meal that like your other half or children or friends or family, do they request certain meals of you whenever you're kind of cooking? Like I always think that anytime I go back, my mum always says that she's happy for me to cook anything, but she always requests that I do it's a Thai curry chicken noodle soup. It is delicious. It's actually the point where I think she asks for that because it's actually the first main meal I learned to make, really. Whereas I think it's actually quite down at the bottom of my repertoire now, really. Below the old cheeseburger soup, which was a classic back on week 1 or 2, wherever it was. Oh, who doesn't love tea? Whereas obviously, I would say my mum's signature dish is Christmas dinner. It has to be Christmas dinner because she makes an unbelievable chestnut stuffing, which is just made with blending chestnuts, but also blending like a ham up in it as well. Whereas I know that my father-in-law's signature thing is kind of he does a gingerbread stuffing using that like a Jamaican ginger loaf, and it's gorgeous as well. So yeah, what is your signature dish? What meal do you cook for people when you're trying to show off, or what meal do your loved ones request the most? Folks, also likewise, if you are interested in getting involved in Teachers Talk Radio, please do get involved and have a chat with us. Message us at TT Radio 2021 to let us know if you want to be a host, because obviously this slot is going to be available. We've got a couple of slots as well, a couple of breakfast slots in there, a couple of late shows, Twilight shows, and so on and so forth. It has been one of the most incredible experiences, I think, from a personal perspective in terms of personal CPD, to the extent that I'm very much planning on sticking around and doing the occasional shows every so often after this, because it's amazing. I've loved it, and a big shout out goes to the kind of exec team and Tom Rogers for especially for messaging me so early on, actually in the kind of infancy. The embryonic stage of this, I guess, and suggesting it, because it's been a wonderful thing to be a part of and to kind of see it grow. And it's a great idea from a man who is surely one of the most innovative in education. So yeah, there's another nice shout out for you, Tom, as well. I'm being nice to you again. What's going on here? Can't be having this too often. So Sophia says, enjoying developing the curriculum the way that I want to, and I've managed up. Yeah, managing up is a very interesting skill. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people in history departments seem to have to do that, I think. I think history, as well as in maths, it seems to be that there's always a member of department on SLT, or certainly quite high up, or maybe as a head of humanities. So I think that from that perspective, I think it's, I think managing up's a very, very good skill. And all it essentially is you can get buy-in from people who are more experienced than you, or I guess more senior than you, in a couple of really simple ways. I think it's just asking them for advice on things, or kind of making suggestions and say, what do you think are the major flaws in this? And also, I would say, before you present things to the department, maybe going to that person and bouncing the idea off them to get buy-in from them so that they then support you in the whole faculty meeting, I think is a really important one. Oh, tea is good. So yeah, I think that's kind of that from there, I suppose. But yeah, what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to cut to the news, and then I'm going to tell you who is going to be the final, for now, person on the Graham train. I'm going to cut to the news with Gail Glenn.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teacher Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. The Delta variant is driving a surge of COVID infections. A 70% spike among children aged 5 to 9 has resulted in widespread absences in primary schools. COVID has now taken hold firmly in schools, contrasting effects during the first wave. According to Public Health England, there were 148 outbreaks linked to educational settings in the week up to the 20th of June, and this was a jump of 54% from the previous week. The government is said to be seriously considering extending the vaccine rollout to pupils to help prevent the virus incubating in schools. Aberdeen Standard Investments has teamed up with Winning Scotland and Making Maths Count to provide a fun way for children to boost their numerical skills as part of the 2021 Scottish Open. The initiative aims to help encourage greater enthusiasm for maths amongst children, parents and carers, and the wider public. Sponsors have sent education packs containing maths challenges and tasks relating to golf and the Scottish Open to primary schools across Scotland. The resources are also available to download online. As part of the project, pupils are being encouraged to enter a competition which will be judged by mathematician Dr. Hannah Fry. Dr. Fry, an ambassador of the project, said, "All children should be able to approach maths with confidence, and it's important to transform the mindset that influences our perceptions of who can and can't be good at maths. You may not think it, but golf is full of physics and maths, so it's great to see Aberdeen Standard Investments and Winning Scotland use that to help young people understand that maths is a creative and engaging subject with many transferable skills." The Scottish Open is held from the 8th until the 11th of July. Jeremy Miles, the Welsh Education Minister, has outlined plans for the return of education after the summer holidays. He is quoted saying, "The guiding principle has to be a move towards education being enabled to operate as normally as possible in the autumn. Currently, all education settings follow national guidance. However, as we move through the pandemic, there will be a need to move to a more localised approach rather than a blanket approach. To enable this, we will publish a national framework for each education sector, which will support them to escalate and de-escalate interventions based on risk. The framework will set out a range of safety measures depending on the risk category based on low, moderate, high and very high risk categories. The frameworks will allow escalation or de-escalation of measures such as testing, the use of face coverings and social distancing. It will apply to schools, colleges and universities. Mr. Miles said that advice would be taken from a number of sources, including public health and the Chief Medical Officer. This has been your daily education news briefing.
Thank you so much to Gilbert there for another wonderful news briefing. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. An awful lot. We'll hear from Glenn again. From Gilbert again in a little bit. So, yes, with regards to the very, very final person on the Graham train, I've been thinking a lot about this because, right, so for context, folks, I've been in my current post now for 8 years, which is 8 out of the 9 years the school's actually existed. And I was thinking a lot about the different people who I could make this. And it could be anyone, I think, from the history community. It could have been, because I've learned so much from all of them, like in particular, people like, Rachel Ball and Sally Thorne, and Sarah Hart-Smith and Al Solomons and things like that. So there's loads of people out there who could give shout outs to, and obviously all of the exec team in the Teachers Talk Radio have been amazing as well as kind of beyond that. But I was kind of thinking, I've been thinking and reflecting a lot because a lot of people in my school are starting to tell the students that they're leaving, and I've not done that yet. I've penciled it in as being the first of July that I'm going to do that. And I've been thinking about the person who's kind of helped me the most in that time. And I know she doesn't necessarily listen to the show, but I'm going to do a shout out for her anyway, so I can post it to her at some point. And that person is actually Nick Burrows, who I've worked with for the whole time. So I joined the school as an NQT, and Nick Burrows, Nicola Burrows, I was doing a couple of days a week and did some history and did some leadership and stuff. And she's always been amazing with me and has really helped me and been very patient with me and has always implemented kind of the ideas I wanted in history, and has done everything kind of I've ever asked, but has also provided me with lots of, massive amounts of support, both, from a leadership perspective, from a curricular perspective, pedagogically, and child for the last 4 years as well, and he's an absolute credit as well. Yeah, she's one of the nicest people you could ever possibly work with, and absolute legend in every way, shape, and form. So yeah, the person who I'm going to nominate for the last Graham train for now. Although don't worry, whenever I do shows in the future, occasional. I guess cover shows, or if I do like occasional one-off shows, I will 100% continue this feature. But yeah, the final one for now on the Graham train is going to Nick Burrows.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.cre8tr. Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
Wow, so many amazing things going on there. Couldn't recommend enough. Yeah, so I think it's definitely worthwhile looking at stuff like that, especially when it's coming up to the end of the year. Is it maybe worth treating somebody to something? Or is it maybe worth treating yourself in advance of the next year? Something, one of those things. I mean, I've had different boxes like in the past, and you know what? It is properly like Christmas every single time something like that arrives. It's amazing to have something like that arrive and just go, oh my God, what's going to be in it? Because I don't know about you guys, but my favorite thing about Christmas is like the surprise of something. The fact it just arrives, you're like, yes, I've got this random surprise thing. I can't wait to see what's inside it. And it doesn't really matter necessarily what it is. It's the fact that you've got the surprise of something exciting arriving every single month. I think is such a massive big thing and massive big part of that. So yeah, that is, I suppose, a lot from there. Now, I tell you what, folks. So I'm very good at this. Obviously, as you can tell, obviously by the fact that the show's here on now, and you can hopefully tell by the accent. I'm not English, so don't have necessarily. I mean, I am actually half English. Both of my grandfathers were English, so I don't really have necessarily any skin in the game here, I guess, with the football that's going on. But I'll only mention this briefly and I'll move on. But I tell you what it is. I'm away to a stag do of my brother-in-law's in London this weekend. And one of the things that's obviously been booked in for is to go and watch some football in a sports, what do you call it, like a sports bar. It's as simple as that. And a part of me is thinking, do I actually want England to win so I can experience the atmosphere of a sports bar in London with an England game on? I kind of want to, I do. Even though I'll be the only non-English person there, I'm actually kind of tempted. I'm tempted by that. It is appealing. Plus, obviously, it's always good to see Calvin Phillips, the Yorkshire Peer, will be amazing. So, there's also that. But yeah, really interesting there. So loads of interesting things going on. And yes, have a think about the adverts. It's so good having some adverts now as well on the show. And couldn't recommend them enough. And thank you so much to our advertisers for supporting the radio as well, which is amazing. So, as I said, when we started off at the very beginning of today, I was asking you for your top tips for new heads of department, or indeed just any heads of department. Because let's face it, I think teaching, we are all quite good, I think, at being as self-reflective as possible. But especially new ones, because as I said earlier, for the context of this is, I feel like there's a lot of new heads of department at the minute, people taking up the jobs kind of from September. So just a little bit of a thing to consider, folks. It's just like, what would your advice be for somebody stepping into a head of department role for the first time in September? And yeah, that's one of the first things that I always think is a priority. Now, we always look at, you always look at and consider things like the curriculum and you're putting your stamp on stuff. But the first and the most important thing in my mind is getting to know your staff, right? So that's going to be one of my big priorities whenever I take over as a director across the trust in September, is getting to know the staff as often as possible. And it's little things, right? So I mean this in a broad range. There's kind of a broad way in which you can do this. Now, the first thing I would say is find out when the people who you're line managing or the people in your department's birthdays are, right? Something really simple like that. Note it down somewhere in your book, because that means you know, like in your diary. I'm assuming everyone still keeps diaries. Everyone that I know does. Everyone still keeps kind of the diary to bring around with. I had an A4 one the last couple of years, and I've actually downsized to an A5 one for this next year, just for sheer handiness. And I'm a little bit worried because I guess 95% of the time you don't necessarily need the full day on an A4 sheet, but there's also always that occasional time that you just have that day that's just you need tons and tons of space for. So I'm hoping I don't regret that. Anyway, it's bought now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, write down the people who you're in your department's birthdays. Write down your line manager's birthday as well, by the way, so it's a good one. And then also find out their favorite drinks, right? If they do drink drink rosé? In which case, what rosé is it? Provence, or do they like an Australian Merlot, or a New Zealand Sauvignon? That's my personal favorite, by the way. If any of you guys want to send me some wine, so a New Zealand Sauvignon. I am yet to have a bad wine from New Zealand. So favorite drink, favorite food. Ask them about their hobbies, because ultimately that makes it a bit easier. When it comes to to Christmas time and birthday times, it makes your life a little bit easier to know what to get for people. I think, and just kind of invest in them. It's always important to kind of know, so how's your week been? Ask those kind of questions in line management meetings, because we've got a responsibility to make sure that our staff don't overwork themselves, but also to bond. If you have a good relationship with your staff will go above and beyond for you. So if you invest in your staff will work harder for you, and your department will be more functional. And we know that every single person, I imagine, can think of somebody who they would go above and beyond for, because they went above and beyond for them and they got to know them. And likewise, I'm sure every single person can think of the opposite, somebody who they didn't really feel like invested in them. So as a result, you didn't necessarily work as hard for them. Or perhaps you always second guessed some ideas that they came up with because there was some part of you didn't really get on with them in some way. And there's, Arbinger would say you're in the box, which is true. And I'll get on to some leadership stuff in a bit. But I think that's a really good way of doing it. But so that's the first thing, is getting to know them as a person, hobbies, what did they do? I'll have them open it up a little bit of a chat with people just when you see them on the corridors and around the school. I think it's really important. But then the next one, and this kind of all comes into the getting to know your staff initial point of mind. And please feel free to chip in or give us a call in and put in your advice on this as well. Asking them their short-term and long-term career ambitions. Because, and I'll get into this in a little bit, if your goal should be to help them get there. You should never feel threatened by somebody who wants your job in a couple of years' time. Because ultimately, if you're a head of department, say you're a head of history, you want somebody to be a head of history in a couple of years' time so you can move to a different job, for example. I mean, there's still nothing wrong, obviously, with staying as head of history, but, you want to know that you've built a network. Imagine if you had built a network whereby people you had 3 or 4 or 5 people who used to work with you who were now heads of department, either in your school or in your trust or across the country. What a network you've built there. What an influence you've had. There's the argument, of course, that you're never more influential than whenever you're on the kind of face value of it, and whenever you're teaching more classes. But if you can make more teachers and more staff as good as possible, then by default, you're having an influence over a broader scale. It might just be a little bit more unusual for you because you're not necessarily doing it on the face value element of it, but I think it's still really, really important. So asking their short-term ambitions. What do they want to achieve this year? Is it an upturn of results, for example? It might be an upturn of results. Some people want to get the data stuff out there, I think. Is it, for example, they've got certain things they want to improve on? Have they got certain pedagogical targets that they want? Do they want to get an outstanding lesson observation? Because let's face it, at some point in our careers, we've all been obsessed with getting the kind of those things. I recommend, by the way, as a school, moving away from that. I don't think we should grade lessons. I don't think anyone should grade lessons. But if you're a school that does, maybe people are going to be obsessed with that. I certainly was in the early days. We don't grade lessons anymore at King's Leadership Academy in Warrington. But certainly at one point, I was very, very, very fiercely wanting an outstanding at every single lesson. And when I didn't get it, I wasn't happy about it. Which wasn't the right approach for me, but I was young and I was competitive and so on and so forth. So I think you ask them about their short-term ambitions, find out what they might be. It could be anything. And so you can essentially, the purpose of that is you can see ways in which you can help them to achieve that this year. And then their long-term ambitions. Because it could be that you've got members of your department who want to go down the curriculum route. They want to go down the head of department route. It could be that you've got people in your department who want to go down the pastoral route. And maybe you can lend them some expertise or you can help them get in there. Because ultimately, and I'll talk a little bit about this later on as well, is our main goal as a head of department is to make the other people in our departments shine. You can look at all of the fun curriculum stuff all you want, I think. And that is such a key part of it. I love curriculum development. Everyone loves curriculum development. The most important thing, though, oh my days, England are winning. The most important thing you can possibly do is to make your department shine, make people shine. Oh my goodness me, this is a big moment. This is a big moment for England, by the way, in the football. I cannot believe. Wow, that's huge. If England hold on to this, they could very well win the Euros. I've said to people today the whole way through, whoever wins this game wins the Euros. I think you can quote me on that, right? Go put some money on it, right? You're welcome. Oh my days. Ed Sheeran's happy, so everyone's happy, right? Sorry, just thinking out loud. Ed Sheeran pun, you're welcome. What else was I going to say there? Yeah, loads of different things. So let's continue on with that. So I said about investing in your staff. Now, what I mean by investing in your staff in this particular occasion is consider how your meetings look. Considering how your meetings look. So how can you make your meetings as valuable as possible for your staff? Right? Now, what I mean by that is CPD over admin, and that's my third point is CPD or admin. But I'll get to that. So if you were think about every time you're going into a meeting, right? Every time you go into a meeting with a staff member, think about this. If I was on the other side of this, would I appreciate this meeting? Because I can think of the people. There's certain people who I was line managing with, and I used to always come out of the meeting feeling a little bit tired because I felt like I've been like emotionally or intellectually worked, and I love that. That was always my absolute favorite thing. Because you feel really, really invested in, right? You feel really, really invested in if that's the case. And also what I think is when you're line managing people, and I think this goes across whether you're a head of department or if you line manage anybody, I think the best thing you can do is to start off a line management meeting by saying, I've got these items this week, but have you got any items you'd like to go through first? Because what you're doing is you're actually giving out quite a nice, subtle message that I'm prioritizing you, right? So if you start off your line management meeting by going, I've got these items, but have you got any items you'd like to go through first? First of all, if somebody, because let's face it, we can't judge what is important to other people. If we're telling them what we're going to do, what we've got to talk to them about, and they say, actually, in my mind, this is more important. They might say, no, you go through those because those are really important items. Or it might be that they'll go, actually, yeah, you're right. I would like to, I do have something that's kind of been on my mind I'd like to go through first. Or I've got some questions I'd like to ask first, just because I've been thinking about these in the last week or however long it's been. And I think that's really important to kind of have that as a meeting. And I think that the best line managers I've had have always started by doing those exact things. Again, the joys of tea. Woo. The third thing I was going to say is CPD over admin. I imagine we can all think of times in the past where, department meetings have been have been admin based. You've gone in, people have just read stuff at you or talked at you or whatever the case may be, and we don't necessarily take anywhere near as much away from it. I think try and avoid your department meetings being admin based. Make them CPD. Make them as high impact training as you possibly can. And to do that, it could be things like dissecting sample answers. So you either find some sample answers online or you get some sample answers from your classes and you kind of look through them. So I know that the English department in our school does this really, really well. And I know that Avril Perchin's done this really well, and I know that Sarah Vernon's done this really well at PASS, who've been our two heads of English in the last couple of years, where they'll get like high, low, and middle answers, a variety of them, or people who they would expect to be high, low, and middle answers, say, for example, during mocks. What they'll do is they'll get all members of the department, whether they teach year 11 or not, into like a room, and you'll kind of get them to divide up into groups and talk through what grades or what marks they think they give certain essays. Because essentially what you're doing there is, even if a staff member doesn't teach year 11 or year 13 or whatever it is, you're training them. Because just by being involved in those conversations, they're now knowing the kind of things people are looking out for. But also you're kind of doing standardization in many ways, right? So I think that's a really important one. It could be curriculum work. So it could be, right, I'm thinking about adding this into the curriculum. What do you guys think? What would you guys include? What would you not include? Or what do you think our curriculum is missing? Or what do you think our curriculum could add in? And a really good time to do that, I think, is towards the end. If you've finished teaching a module, I think you should do that. Because I think you should always make your medium-term plans and your kind of planning documents live documents, because we should constantly be thinking about what did and did not go well. At your end of unit assessments, for example, what did students consistently not get right? Because if they didn't get it right, we've not taught them it right ultimately. And it's really, really important, I think, to make sure that changes in the future. Really, really important, I think, to make sure that changes in the future. And Germany just missed a massive chance. It's been Mueller as well. Woof! Is this going to be England's year? Is it? Whisper it quietly. I'm actually kind of excited for them, just because Calvin Phillips is great. So yeah, I think that's another thing. Also, one of the things that I really like doing in my meetings is looking at the coming weeks. What do people asking some people like, oh, so how have you taught this in the past? Or can anyone think of, and a key one, misconceptions? Can anyone think of any misconceptions that have came up in these topics in the past in year 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 7, 8? Because let's face it, sometimes we over egg 10 and 11 in their exam years simply because they're exam years. When in actual fact, if we scrape out the misconceptions, we get rid of the misconceptions in year 7 and 8. They stop. You're being much more. You're not having that firefighting in year 10 and 11. So I think that's a really big one. And it just allows you to share expertise. If you have NQTs or RQTs in your department, allowing that opportunity to kind of discuss misconceptions and discuss how people are going to deal with certain things, like they could be doing a question that you're going to mark or whatever the case may be, can really upskill staff. And I think it's really important to do that. Number 4, and this is something that I do as well, I think it's really, really important, is knowing the students. Ask your staff. So you as a department, because you'll get into loads of lessons, hopefully, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But how do you know that your staff are on top of the students of concern? How do you get them to verbalize it? Because sometimes just by verbalizing the students that they're a little bit worried about, for one reason or another, you can see a big picture, and you're normally the link between your department and either SLT or like a head of humanities, for example, or a faculty lead. And what then by default you can do is you can ask if you say, what students are you worried about this week? Right? You can also you can give some ideas, or you can go, well, what have you done about it? Okay, what have you made a phone call home for that person? That could help. Or you can maybe fill in some blanks there and help support them with that. Or I'll take that. You've got a lot of work on your hands at the minute, so I'll take that off you. I would suggest obviously empowering staff, because it's well versed that I think you should try and avoid doing like taking over people's discipline for them, because what actually happens is the student sees that person as the disciplinarian rather than you. So for example, what I mean by that, disciplinary sounds very strong. What I mean is try to always do your own consequences, be they positive or negative. If a student needs a phone call home, try to do them yourself. But if you feel like somebody needs support with that, or it needs escalating, then that's where you can step in as a head of department and kind of say, oh, here's how I can help with that. Or it could be other things. It could be somebody's like, oh, you know what, I'm trying to get through this student. Their writing's not improving. They're really struggling with this, and I don't know what to do with them. And it's good for you to know that, because you can then support your members of staff. And sometimes, again, as I said, just by talking about it, other people can jump in and kind of help with that. Advice number 5, and I think this is possibly the most important piece of advice, is walk through frequently from the beginning. Get into your staff's lessons as often as you possibly can. That's so important. And it's the only way if your CPD is having an impact. It's the only way that you get to really gauge the position that the department is in, is by going and having a look through lessons. Now, this doesn't have to be high threat. You're not Ofsted. You're not necessarily going in there to judge. You could be going in there to go, what do my department need support with? What are they really good at? What are the strengths that I feel like we could share as a department? What people could I get involved in doing certain things, for example? All of this stuff I think is super important. But do it from the very, very beginning, folks. Because if you don't, oh my days, is that 2-0 to England? Is that Harry Kane has actually decided that he wants to turn up to the tournament? Oh my days, folks. Tom Hopkins-Burke has said it's coming home. And you know what? It may well be. This is kind of exciting. I'm actually kind of excited even as a Northern Irishman, just because I'm very, very excited. Declan Rice, man. Declan Rice is just he's a Ford to the Rolls Royce that is Calvin Phillips. Declan Rice. Calvin Phillips has been pinging balls into the corners the whole game, Tom Hopkins-Burke, and you know it. Not a chance. Not even in the top 4 players in the team, Declan Rice. Whereas Phillips, what can you say? Great ball up by Grealish as well. Grealish is just an assist king. It has to be said. And that's one way to get Harry Kane scores, by making it point blank for them. But yeah, so back about the kind of walkthrough frequently. If you do walkthroughs from the beginning, it becomes low threat and it becomes a norm. And ultimately, what I would do as well is to make it low threat is to start with relationship building. What you do initially is you go in and you just praise the department for what they're doing well, right? So you go in and go, oh, can you share that? I love how you've done that. It's a really good idea. And get them to share the ideas. What you could do, if there's any areas to develop that you notice, my advice would be to make them like a departmental CPD session, so it's low threat. It's not like any one person. You just go, okay, folks, so let's do a training session on this. And it could be if you see somebody who's really strong at it, you get them to lead on it. And that's all to do with kind of the delegating, which I'll get to in a second. Number 6, I think, is really important. Look at there's a player being taken off right now, Tom Hopkins-Burke, who is, who's not been taken off for a single moment of this entire tournament and is still the only outfield player for England to have not missed a single moment of the tournament. It's Calvin Phillips, isn't it? So another one I think is, again, really important is never be afraid to give in to the better idea. I've learned this from a good few excellent pieces of leadership work, some excellent leadership books, which essentially say it's if somebody comes up with a better idea than you, never be afraid to go along with it. Never, ever, ever be afraid to go along with it. So give staff the opportunity to feedback on ideas before implementation. And it could be that you go to if you think there's a member of staff in your department who's maybe potentially quite difficult or might be quite averse to an idea, go catch them one-on-one first and talk them through the why, get their feedback on it, so you can then preempt that kind of perhaps negative thing. Because change management is really important as a department leader. People don't like change. Even if the change is for the better, even if it's good change, people don't like things just because they're different sometimes. So if you preempt that by having one-to-one conversations, often when you introduce it as a whole department, it becomes easier. It may be that you actually ask staff to trial the ideas if they do have reservations about anything, and then you get them to feedback as a department. Because what could end up being the case then is that they come back to you and go, oh, actually, I tried that, and actually it worked a lot better than I thought. Or they could come back and go, I've still got this reservation about it, and you could try and ease them into it in a different way. I think that's a really important thing to do that. Also, I think if you open up ideas to the group, what you end up getting is you could sometimes have your idea improved upon, or indeed you could have snags that you'd never thought about. If so, praise the idea coming from other people, go along with it, because it doesn't matter. If somebody else comes up with an idea, it doesn't matter that it's not your idea. It doesn't make you a weak leader to edit your ideas in the face of feedback. It doesn't make you a weak leader to be open to feedback. It makes you an excellent leader, because it shows that you're not an insecure leader. And even if you do feel a little insecure, even if you are suffering from imposter syndrome in a new job, be open to feedback all the time, because the best leaders are, right? And it could well be that after feedback, you go, you know what, we're going to go with this idea because I think that this might work because of expertise or whatever the case may be. Fine. But always just be open to feedback and new ideas. So, so important. Scott, my main man, how's it going? He says preach. Scott knows. He's tuned in for the final Graham show. Number 7 is delegate to improve leadership capacity, I think. So I think you shine if your staff shine. My principal's always said this. He says you can tell an excellent head of department by how much, not by how much they stand out, but by how much the staff that they lead stand out. That's how it should be. It's almost like you need to be much more subtle in what you do, in that sense, is that you need to invest in your staff, and your staff need to do well. And if your staff are doing well, then you're doing your job effectively. And that's where it all kind of comes into play there. And I think I still maintain to this day that that's an excellent piece of feedback, and a very, very strong piece of feedback. Because again, I imagine that everyone's worked with leaders in the past who are more obsessed with making them look good. So maybe resource hoarding or whatever the case may be. And that's absolutely not what a leader should do. If your staff shine, you shine. So if you follow step 1 correctly as well, which is, if you remember all the way back to the beginning of this run, like however long ago it was, getting to know your staff. So what are their short-term and long-term career ambitions and so on. You now know what your staff's aspirations are, right? So essentially that means you can invest in them and help them to get to those positions. Like, how are you going to help them? If they want to be a head of department in the future, how can you involve them in stuff, right? How can you involve them in curriculum planning, data analysis, whatever the case may be, things that will raise their capacity. And also, you might also be, there's a young German girl crying on the television, that's funny. Sorry, a bit mean, but also that is quite funny. You know what? Years of success. It's one of those things. Sad to see Thomas Muller going, it actually has to be said. He's been a great international player for years, but also Calvin Phillips, best defensive midfielder in the world. I'm going to say so. Completely biasedly. And that's also, it's why I'm in a very weird position this year of wanting England to do well for the first time in my life, because I want Calvin Phillips to do well. So Scott Peasley says, football vomit. God, you're such a hipster. I don't like it. I'm so edgy. Stupid. God, it is edginess. But yeah, so by the leadership capacity, what I always think about this way is, if you're ambitious, it could be that you want to be a head of department forever, and that's fine. I have no issues with that. And I also have absolutely no issues with people who want to be classroom teachers forever as well. I take my hat off to you, because I think it's the best job in the world. But if you're maybe really ambitious or you want to get to certain positions, in terms of like a positional perspective, the only way, and you want to stay in the same school, for example, the only way you can move up in a school is if the people who are working for you are in a position where they can fill the void, if you know what I mean. So, for example, if you are currently a head of history and you want to become a head of humanities, or you want to move into a teaching and learning post in SLT, the best way you can do that in your current school is by making the people who are working, who are in your department, the future heads of department. How do you invest in them to make sure that happens? So raising capacity within your department, within your trust, from a leadership perspective. So as I said, involving them in data analysis, curriculum planning, beyond all of these different things, I think is super, super important. And the final thing, and I've left this to last because I think it's quite funny in its own way, in my own weird. It's sad that so I agree with that. I'll come back to the same. The last thing I was going to say is start with a why. No matter what you're doing, no matter what you're introducing, start with the why, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That's what you should always do. I think that's super, super important, is to start with the why. So yeah.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club.
Who doesn't love stationery? That's the real question there, right? Who does not love stationery? I've just seen one of the best tweets that I've ever seen in response to a Tom Rogers tweet from Deputy Lesson Copy, who has put, I don't know if you've seen it. Boris Johnson's put out a tweet saying, "Come on, England," a picture of him like, looking enthused, watching the television, watching the England game, and somebody's pasted the Twilight Show advert onto the television screen saying, "Come on, Kyle Graham," and it's very, very good. It is very, very good. That makes me very happy because it's hilarious. So yeah, I've enjoyed that. That's properly tickled me. That's so good. Yeah, fantastic. So yeah. What was I going to say? I just got completely lost in this. So yeah, Scott has made a really good point there. I think I misspoke on that in terms of the ambitious thing. I mean ambitious in terms of positional sense. That's why I said positional sense. Scott did say it's sad that ambition isn't classroom based in education. I didn't know. I think I misspoke, and I'd like to correct that because I do think that I think that you can be ambitious and be classroom based, and I think that's actually more ambitious because I think there is pressure to move up in education, and I think that isn't necessarily the right thing. I mean, I think it is for some people. Like for example, I am positionally kind of really ambitious. I don't know exactly how high I want to get to be honest, but I do know I want to get as close, relatively close to the top. But I do think there is that kind of thing. If there's more people should be encouraged just to be able to, if they want to stay in the classroom, they should be able to. Because I think not enough people necessarily choose to do that, which I think is really, really important. So yeah, I think that's a big one. I think that's a big one from that as well. So thank you, Scott. That's a really, really good point. So yeah, that's kind of that from there. Sorry, I do apologize. Lots of things going off at the minute here. So yeah, that's kind of that from there. So if anyone else has any kind of advice, I guess, for kind of you guys' department and stuff, then please put them in the chat. I'd love to hear them. And as Tom Hopkins-Burke says, now that football's coming home, I guess everyone's going to be delighted and buzzing and so on and so forth. So that's everyone's going to be very excited about this. Everyone's going to be very excited. Oh my days, very, very warm. Yeah, so what was I going to... I was looking for something here. I can't remember what I was looking for. So I do apologize, folks. I do apologize. Oh, yes, leadership books to study. I would recommend... There's a couple of leadership books I would... there's a couple of leadership books I would suggest. If you are interested, if you are becoming a head of department in the new year, or indeed if you're going into any leadership position. And I know that leadership books are kind of like, some people like them, some people don't. But I think that there's some that I would really suggest having a look at. One, and I've mentioned this a few times, is Drive by Daniel Pink. It's all about motivation and the awareness that not everyone is motivated in the same way. So, you know, not everyone's going to motivate in the same way. And it's important to recognize that you might need to motivate some people in a different way than you do motivate others. There's Black Box Thinking, which is a really in-depth look at how the aviation sector are very, very proactive. The second that somebody reports an issue, it gets solved. And there's examples in there like there's once, you know, it's this kind of idea of the black box in the plane where it kind of records errors and you immediately go into diagnostic and solve it. Whereas it compares it to the medical profession where there's actually a lot of covering up. Doctors and surgeons very rarely admit mistakes. They might say, you know, it's one of those things because you've got that kind of lawsuit culture. It's only whenever you kind of delve into things, you kind of get expert opinion, look into it, that you kind of find out that somebody's made a mistake. So, for example, you know, my wife had an operation in her elbow, and you know, she was still sore with her like a year and a half afterwards, and it was only after we looked into it, about a year and a half, 2 years afterwards, that we found out that the surgeon had actually botched the surgery, right, and had got it wrong. They didn't tell us that at the time. They did not tell us that at the time. So there's a real issue in medicine about that. Yeah, so Scott rightly says it stifles a growth culture. You need the ability to go, please tell us about the mistakes we've made. And what we do is in our schools, we have a thing called a black box review where we do this a couple of times a year where you'll kind of go in and you'll speak to members of SLT about your kind of data. And there's a really good opportunity there to go, how can we clear the path for you? And that's really important. It's looking to see if we can preempt ideas or preempt corrections. And it's that idea of how can we be more like the aviation industry and be as proactive as possible. If there's a mistake, let's change it. And I think that's a really, really important thing to do. The Chimp Paradox and Arbinger are also very good books. What's the Arbinger? I can't remember. I'm trying to think of it. It's the Self-Deception, Leadership and Self-Deception is the Arbinger book I'm thinking of here. The reason that I think those two books are really good is because they make you think about how we act. So the Chimp Paradox is trying to get you to think about when does your kind of primitive side take over and lead to you, I guess, doing things that, when does it lead to you doing things that I guess are fight or flight? And if you're aware of those things happening, then sometimes you can stop it in high stress situations, for example. And Leadership in the Art of Self-Deception is very much looking at when are you in the box? And that's kind of about when are there certain people that you go into a meeting thinking this person is going to be difficult, or you go in and go, oh, I can't believe I have to listen to this person. And how do you react to that? How do you get yourself back out of the box? It's essentially the Arbinger, the Leadership in the Art of Self-Deception is all about seeing people as people. How do you see people as, being individuals who act in certain ways for certain reasons? And it's all about how we can avoid seeing people as objects. And I think that's really important. So those are 4 books I would advise getting involved in if you are going into a leadership position, or if you're already involved in one of you and you're looking for a new leadership book to read. So those are Drive by Daniel Pink, Black Box Thinking, The Chimp Paradox, and from the Arbinger Institute, you've got Leadership and the Art of Self-Deception. And we'll go over for the final time on a Kyle Graham show to Gail Glenn and the news.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teacher Talk Radio news with Gail Glenn. The Delta variant is driving a surge of COVID infections. A 70% spike among children aged 5 to 9 has resulted in widespread absences in primary schools. COVID has now taken hold firmly in schools, contrasting effects during the first wave. According to Public Health England, there were 148 outbreaks linked to educational settings in the week up to the 20th of June, and this was a jump of 54% from the previous week. The government is said to be seriously considering extending the vaccine rollout to pupils to help prevent the virus incubating in schools. Aberdeen Standard Investments has teamed up with Winning Scotland and Making Maths Count to provide a fun way for children to boost their numerical skills as part of the 2021 Scottish Open. The initiative aims to help encourage greater enthusiasm for maths amongst children, parents and carers, and the wider public. Sponsors have sent education packs containing maths challenges and tasks relating to golf and the Scottish Open to primary schools across Scotland. The resources are also available to download online. As part of the project, pupils are being encouraged to enter a competition which will be judged by mathematician Dr. Hannah Fry. Dr. Fry, an ambassador of the project, said, "All children should be able to approach maths with confidence, and it's important to transform the mindset that influences our perceptions of who can and can't be good at maths. You may not think it, but golf is full of physics and maths, so it's great to see Aberdeen Standard Investments and Winning Scotland use that to help young people understand that maths is a creative and engaging subject with many transferable skills." The Scottish Open is held from the 8th until the 11th of July. Jeremy Miles, the Welsh Education Minister, has outlined plans for the return of education after the summer holidays. He is quoted saying, "Our guiding principle has to be a move towards education being enabled to operate as normally as possible in the autumn. Currently, all education settings follow national guidance. However, as we move through the pandemic, there will be a need to move to a more localised approach rather than a blanket approach. To enable this, we will publish a national framework for each education sector which will support them to escalate and de-escalate interventions based on risk. The framework will set out a range of safety measures depending on the risk category based on low, moderate, high and very high risk categories. The frameworks will allow escalation or de-escalation of measures such as testing, the use of face coverings and social distancing. It will apply to schools, colleges and universities. Mr. Miles said that advice would be taken from a number of sources, including public health and the Chief Medical Officer. This has been your daily education news briefing.
Oh my days, my fan is working overtime here because it is warm in this room. It's one of those really muggy days today. It's not quite, it's not quite, it's not like really sunny outside, but it's very, very, very toasty. If you're just joining us, folks, yeah, I'm sweating. Just how I live my life at the minute, just absolutely sweating it out. So yeah, you know what I'm going to go straight on to now, folks, is I've got a couple of other things I want to talk about, but just to make sure I've got time for it, because people took some time to kind of tweet it, is I did say I want to hear, and you know what, Scott, because you're here as well, I want to hear yours. I did say at the very, very beginning of the show, I want to hear what people's signature dishes. So, for example, what meal do you cook for people when you're trying to show off? Or like, what meal do your loved ones request the most? Or if you were to have a first date around, what would you cook for them? Like, what's your kind of signature thing? And I kind of said it's always my mum's roast dinners when we go back, and kind of chestnut stuffing there. And whenever I go back, my mum always requests I make my Thai chicken noodle soup. So you kind of got those kind of examples, I guess, coming in from that particular one. So yeah, let's have a look and see what we've got. We've got loads of different things. So I definitely want to hear Scott Pusley's signature dish. What's it going to be? So yeah, we've got one person said eggy crumpet, followed by a black pudding carbonara. That's from Mr. Nafty. No, it has to be said, a black pudding carbonara. I love a carbonara, but a black pudding carbonara sounds absolutely delicious. Carbonara, combine them, boom, sold. I'd be interested to see what the recipe is, of course, because I do think that a good carbonara needs to not be made with cream, right, to make it the traditional way. I did one of my earlier shows had the recipe for it, but if you want to make a good carbonara, it's all about get fry pancetta off in some olive oil, and then add your some olive oil and just a clove of garlic, and then take the garlic out, and then add your spaghetti into it, mix it all up to get all of the oils in it. Take it off the heat, and then you add in a mixture, and your mixture is just you've already pre-mixed this, by the way. It's like 40 grams of Parmesan, 3 egg yolks with black pepper, because it doesn't need cream. You don't need cream on it. You don't need cream in it at all. You add that into the spaghetti pancetta mixture, mix it all up, and you add just a tiny bit of you reserve a little bit of the starchy water from the pasta, and add that in, and it gives it a nice gloss. But yeah, how you add black pudding into that sounds delicious. Oh, Scott, you're treating us. Scott has gone for my favorite type of potato, dauphinoise potato. I love a dauphinoise potato with garlic butter chicken followed by homemade apple pie. Scott, I'm coming around to your house, mate. Let's do this. This sounds delish. That is a combo and a half. That is a homely, delicious, delicious meal. I'd be well up for that. Well up for that. What are you serving your apple pie with? You going ice cream? You going cream? You going custard? You going all three? Like some absolute deviant? Let's do it. Why not? All three. That's a meal that maternity pants at the ready. Absolutely. That's what it needs to be. That's how you know you've had a good meal, right? Miss McMaths said chicken, curried goat, oxtail, rice, fried dumplings, mac and cheese, salad, and coleslaw. Oh my days. That is gorgeous. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous sounding thing. I love mac and cheese. You know what? I had never had mac and cheese before I moved to England. I moved to England in 2012, and I'd never had mac and cheese in my life. I had mac and cheese the first time, I think, in September 2013, when I had it at my current school. And I was like, oh my days, where has this been all my life? This is gorgeous. This is the nicest thing ever. Especially get cut up sausage in it. So yeah, mac and cheese is good. Curried goat is my favorite. If I ever go to Turtle Bay, I always get curried goat. It's absolutely divine. I do love dumplings as well. Fried dumplings are great. Love some rice. Yeah, coleslaw. You know what? I'd love that. What a spread of food that is. The chicken, curry goat, oxtail, rice, fried dumplings, mac and cheese, salad, and coleslaw. Oof. That is unbelievable. It's so good. D. Greg Dunn says Spanish chicken, boneless chicken thighs, with chorizo, olives, red peppers, and tomatoes cooked at a low heat for two hours. and served with brown rice and steamed sweetheart cabbage. Oh, again, that's a good one. We've got Tom Hopkins Burke calling in. Tom Hopkins Burke. Hello. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Carl. Can you hear me?
I certainly can. I certainly can.
I thought I would call in as it's your last show for a while, and just to say a big thank you for keeping us all entertained. Firstly on the Friday drive home, and then on the Tuesday in the middle of the week. It's been nothing less than a pleasure to be tuning in most weeks.
Oh, so that's very, very kind of you. Thank you so much for always turning up to, because you do. You turn up all the time, and you're always posing the questions in the chat, which is great because it stops it from being as much of a Kyle monologue, doesn't it? I suppose. So
can I suggest my signature dish?
I was going to ask, because you have given me so much grief about my signature dishes for the last however many months. You absolutely need to, and you know what? The pressure's on because I'll be judging you big time on this one.
Here's what I would do. I'd get my bacon.
Right.
Small pieces. Heat it in a pan. Cook till it's about crispy.
Yeah.
And then take another pan. Melt the butter. Add some ground beef.
Oof.
Break it up.
I think I know what you're doing here. I know where this is going. Oh my days! It's just clicked. Do you want to tell the people exactly what it is that you're going through here?
I made it on Saturday, Carl. It was delicious.
Did you actually? Did you actually make it? No way. Oh my goodness.
Kyle Graham's cheeseburger soup.
Oh my goodness me, he's actually done it. He's actually
I thought I'd pay homage to the man, the myth, the legend himself.
There it is.
So on that note, Kyle, enjoy the rest of your show.
Thank you so much, Tom Hopkins Burke. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the cheeseburger soup. I'm glad you actually were brave enough to try it. Good man indeed.
No problem. See you later.
See you later, Tom. Oh, fantastic. The man, the myth, the legend, as always, Tom Hopkins Burke giving us a shout in to say that although he has been making fun of it for about 5 months, he did, in fact, enjoy the cheeseburger soup. So I'm glad to hear. And you've all heard it here, folks. Although he's been ribbing me about it for God knows how long, he did enjoy the cheeseburger. And there's Khalil coming in with the "It's coming home." Khalil, it has to be said, I've been saying all day today, whoever wins this game is winning the Euros. And I actually think, although this is the first time in my life, as I've said this a couple of times, first time in my life I've ever actually wanted England to win, because it's Calvin Phillips. And you know what? Best defensive midfielder in Europe right now is Calvin Phillips. Here's a stat for you, Khalil. Calvin Phillips has played 15 and a half hours on the pitch for England. In that time, England have conceded 1 goal from open play and have kept 9 clean sheets. He's the only outfield player to play 100% of the minutes for England so far in the Euros. Whoa, 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 he's magic, you know. Phillips the Yorkshire Pirlo. And that's absolutely complete. You don't play the correlation versus causation thing. You know he is. Look at the pings he was putting off to Saka and Sterling in that first half. Oof, that's where we're at. Khalil, I'm going to have to ask you as well, if you want to put in the chat, what is your signature dish, my man? We've had from a couple of people here what their signature dish is, like the dish that people ask you to make, or the dish that you would cook to impress somebody. Let's go for your version of that, I think, this week. Let's have it. My wife makes. I think my wife doesn't necessarily do the kind of hot meal element of it. She does occasionally, but hers is the baking. She makes an unbelievable chocolate cake. She's made like a chocolate cake with like salted caramel sauce before. It's been unbelievable. She made brownies once, and these brownies were like they had 3 chocolate oranges in them, and they were divine. You know what? 5 days later, still gooey. But a big shout out has to go to Mr. Michael Childs, who has been consistently baking for us as a department this year. And on Friday, he brought in chocolate brownies with big chunks of white chocolate in it, and they lightly caramelized on the bottom as well. They were unreal. They were unreal. And gluten-free as well. Gluten-free, and you couldn't tell. Unbelievable. Khalil just provides tasty and edible food. No signature dish. Everything he touches turns to gold. A. Ferguson teacher said, I'd probably just get something prepared from M&S. To be fair, 2 can dine in, or it's unbelievable. I don't know if they still do that anymore at M&S, because there used to be an M&S in the centre of Warrington, but it closed down. And it used to get a starter, main, dessert, side, and a bottle of wine for 10 quid. And that was unreal, to be fair. I do quite like them. So that's a big one. Yeah, so Scott usually says school pizza and chips drowning it. Pizza and gravy, Scott, you're a monster. We also had Miss Donnelly said chicken breasts filled with stuffing, wrapped in bacon, roast potatoes, roast carrots, parsnips, and gravy. That is a good one. That is a good tasting dish. Oh, I love this. We've got an actual picture from Chris Mind First UK, who's given us pictures of confit duck with root veg. And you know what? Comfy duck is unbelievable. Comfy duck is unbelievable. Mark's tweet said steak with baked potato and a huge salad bowl. It has to be said, I never understand the baked potato thing. I think baked potatoes are the worst kind of potatoes. And I'm an Irishman, so I must know, right? So give me Scott Pusley's Dauphinoise any day of the week. I think if I'm going to rate potatoes, let's rate some potatoes, folks. I'm going to say Dauphinoise at the top. I'm going to go for potato gratin just underneath because they're very similar. Then I'm going to go for roasties. In fact, good roasties beat everything, I think. Super crispy on the outside with cooked in goose fat or duck fat are the 2 best ways of doing them. Then you've got, I guess, actually, you know what? I'm going to put chunky chips up there as well. Like if you get triple cooked chunky chips, well up there. Then I'm going to put sweet potato fries. Then I'm going to put chips like fries, and then I'm going to put boiled potato. I'm going to put baked potato, and then finally boiled potatoes. Boiled potatoes are so dull. Boiled new potatoes, boring. Get in the bin. So yeah, that's kind of my take from there. Now, let's have a look. A couple of things, and it's kind of been hinted at by Gail in the news there. Was the good news for everyone is it seems like there's a lot of movement towards, and there was a couple of satirical, by the way, posts about that as well. So I think Craig Owen said beans on toast is his signature dish, and Peter Williams said full English. Again, can't go wrong with either of them. Although it has to be said, a full English pales in comparison to the mighty Ulster fry. You need to get, if you've never had soda bread or potato bread, get them in your lives, folks, because they are the gods of bread, right? The gods of bread, the wizards of bread. But yeah, so school isolation rules are likely to end in the autumn. And I guess, you know what? I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of talk about, instead of having this, essentially, I think it's a very stupid rule at the minute, of if somebody ends up testing positive, everyone around them goes off for 10 days. Replacing that with tests. If somebody tests positive next to you, you have to do tests for the next 10 days or next however many days. That makes so much more sense. Because at the minute we're sending off kids, and I don't know about you guys, but very, very few people who get sent home because of proximity end up testing positive. So it seems massively detrimental to the lives of many, many people. Certainly in primary schools where they're sending like whole classes home. Whereas I think an effective track and trace system is make sure all of your seating plans are uploaded to a central file, only send home to kids who sit beside. That's the most common sense way of doing it, I think. But I think it's having a huge impact. And to be fair, there's a couple of people who actually agree with that and are saying that there's no point leaving us to September. We've got 2.5 weeks left, and that's essentially a massive, massive impact. So yeah, there's some kind of talk saying, so Steve Chalk, who's the founder of Oasis Community Learning, which runs 33 schools in charge of that multi-academy trust, I said there's no point in leaving it to September. Do it now. And I agree. I imagine the schools up and down the country at the minute, because of the Delta variant, have got many people off isolating who are guaranteed to not end up catching the actual illness. Get these tests done. We know we've got access to the tests now. We've all got access to the tests. Let's get kids tested instead of just sending everyone home willy-nilly. So yeah, that's a big thing. And the other thing that came out today I want to talk a little bit about is Gavilar Williamson wants tips for calm classrooms from teachers, which, you know what, is one of those things. I think if it wasn't him saying it, I think it would probably have a bit of a more positive response. He also seeks to use what's apparently a controversial mobile phone free school day. It's not controversial. I've never seen a school work effectively which doesn't ban mobile phones. Kids shouldn't be allowed mobile phones in school. There is loads of evidence out there to suggest that they are huge distractions, right? Massive distractions. Mobile phones and the accessibility of instant messaging, of WhatsApp, of Snapchat, of social media in general have a massively negative impact on kids' mental well-being. It's a massive distraction. So I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I agree. Get rid of mobile phones in school entirely. I think that's really, really, really important. But he does want to consult on behaviour in schools. And to be fair, you can kind of see this. I do think that behaviour in schools is widely reported to be significantly worse in the UK than it is in many other places across Europe. And I know this from talking to people who've went and have taught internationally, have all said that behaviour in international schools is significantly better than English schools. So we have an issue. We have a behavioural epidemic in Britain that is long lasting. And we need to be better at this. And I think there's multiple levels to it. I think there is apathy towards education in this country, which you do not get in many other countries in Europe. I think there is a apathy towards teachers in this country. But I think that the most important thing is we've got a culture of acceptance at times. We look at things and go, oh, well, let's not issue consequences for bad behavior. We must issue consequences for bad behavior because it's the only way that stops it. Likewise, we need to praise good behavior, obviously. And we need to get parents on board as much as possible. Because I think everyone can imagine as well that the second you get a parent who is not on board with the school, things become more difficult. And I think that our sensationalist media doesn't help with this. What I mean by that is we've all seen countless people playing the victim in newspapers, crying that their child has been sent home because they've got a bright fluorescent pink mohawk. Of course they've been sent home. That's ridiculous and it's not professional. It's also in the school's uniform policy that you have signed up to. We need to have behavior policies and uniform policies like contracts. If you sign up for a school, you sign up for it. If you break it, you go home. There's no need for our students to wear makeup in schools. There's no need for our students to have earrings in schools. There's no need for our students to wear jewelry in schools at all. There's no need for students to have incredibly short hair or extreme haircuts in schools. It's as simple as that. You sign up for a policy, you adhere to it. It is literally that simple. And it's about sweating the small stuff, ladies and gentlemen. People go out there and suggest, oh, it doesn't have any impact on education. It does. Everyone who's ever worked in education knows that it does. If you are a school that is lax with rules on uniform, it tends to be a school that is also lax on rules on behaviour. And it's one of those things. Sweating the small stuff sets a standard. It absolutely sets a standard. I think that's really, really, really important. So my final recipe of the week, folks, is one that I've had last night. And I always do a lot of curries, folks. And they always come from very similar sources. Is a chicken pasanda. Right? So it's not for those of you out there who have any kind of nut allergies, because this does actually contain quite a large amount of almonds. So what you'll need for this is you'll need about 250, I always do these based upon 2 people, by the way. So you'll need about 250 grams of chicken breast. You will need 80 grams of natural yogurt. You'll need an onion. You'll need 2 garlic cloves, although I tend to use 3 big garlic cloves, 3 or 4 big garlic cloves. You'll need about 15 grams of fresh root ginger. Again, you can use a little bit more than that. You need about half a teaspoon of turmeric. Be careful with turmeric because it stains everything. Very, very good for you, though. About a tablespoon of garam masala. Again, be generous with that if you want to be. You need about a bag of ground almonds. Now, if you need to know where to look for that, they're in the baking section, is ground almonds. And the ground almonds are absolutely key to this dish. Also, as a garnish, get about 15 grams of flaked almonds as well. Then you'll need to get like chicken stock. My recommendation when you're ever making chicken stock, he's found it already. Tom Hawkinsburg knows his stuff. You'll need, I would always recommend the Knorr chicken stock cubes. The jelly ones are the best. You'll need 25 grams of solid coconut cream. If you're ever making a creamy or a Thai curry-based dish, solid coconut cream is a godsend. And then you'll need your rice. Now, you can use about 100 grams of basmati rice, or what I'm doing at the minute is to try and keep it as low carb as possible, although you do add sugar to this dish eventually, is I use broccoli rice. I would never buy pre-made broccoli rice. It's a bit rank. Just buy a big head of broccoli and grate it up. So how you make this one is you heat up a pan with no oil in it, and you just add the almonds into it, cook for 2 or 3 minutes until they toast. Now move them around a lot and keep an eye on them because they do burn very easily, do flaked almonds. So be very careful with that. While they're kind of doing that, boil half a kettle, take your almonds off as soon as they're ready, put them into your little ramekin or a little dish, peel and finely chop a brown onion, and I always chop my garlic because I don't like how much gets wasted in a garlic press. And then grate your ginger. If you've never really used fresh ginger before, just cut either side of it and then scrape off the skin with a teaspoon. It's always the best way of doing it. You return the pan to medium heat after you've taken your almond stuff out, your almond flakes out. Add some vegetable oil. Once that's hot, add in your chopped onion with a generous amount of salt, and then cook it until it's softened. Once it's softened, add in your ginger, your garlic, your garam masala, and your turmeric. Give that a good mix around so it coats all of the onion and it goes really fragrant. I always get a good whiff of it at this point. It smells amazing. Now, keep an eye on this because this can burn quite easily. And do feel free to add as much additional oil to this as possible. Because it's not as much oil as possible, but just make sure it never goes dry because it will burn. Now, while that's cooking, chop your chicken breasts up into bite-sized pieces and dissolve your chicken stock cube in about 150 mils of water, boiled water. Obviously, during all of this, you cook your rice, right? Now, after that's kind of your onions have went really nice and fragrant, add the chopped chicken and mix that around for 2 minutes until it's completely covered in the spices and you've kind of sealed the chicken. And it's lovely because it goes a really lovely color, does the chicken at this point. Then you're going to add in your chicken stock. You're going to add in your ground almonds. You're going to add in your coconut cream, which you should chop up, by the way, the solid coconut cream, and a generous pinch of sugar. I would say about maybe a tablespoon of sugar at this point. And you cook for about 6 to 8 minutes further until the chicken's cooked through. Now, what you're going to do then is, again, you can add some garlic and coriander naans at this point or anything like that into the oven. But what I would suggest doing at this point is you're going to take your, once that's cooked through, take it off the heat, add in that 80 grams of yogurt. I tend to use Greek yogurt or natural yogurt and mix all of that through. Now, if at any point it looks a bit thick or your sauce dries out, I just add a little bit of extra water to it. That's the best way to do it. Just be very light touch with that, otherwise it can go quite watery. And yeah, there you go. What you do is you add it to your dish and you garnish it. Those flaked almonds you made at the start are a garnish. You're currently cooking Gusto. You know what? I love Gusto and I love HelloFresh. I think that from my personal experience was that I find that Gusto's recipes were better, but HelloFresh sent you better portions, and they also allowed you to. They also sent you 5 or 6 meals a week, whereas Gusto only ever sent you 4. I also found that Gusto was more inconsistent with sending you the right recipe. So sometimes I got I got a lot more missing ingredients with Gusto, as we said, than I ever did with HelloFresh. But both of them are really good. And whenever I'm not on a low carb diet, I will 100% be going back to them because I love cooking, but I'm not a big fan of shopping for the food. But folks, you know what? it's been an absolute pleasure doing this. It has been one of the most genuinely enjoyable experiences that I've had in education. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you if you've been somebody who's tuned in at all over the last kind of 5 months or so. Thank you if you're a new listener, or an older listener. Thank you to obviously massive amounts of people. Thank you to all the special guests we've had, which is not many from my perspective, it's just mostly a rant from me. The wonderful, wonderful Teachers Talk Radio hosts and whatnot. The executive team, who've been amazing and very supportive, and I've had a lot of fun with them. You will see me around. This is not goodbye. This is a see you later. I will pop on and do occasional shows in the future. And thank you so much to those of you who kind of log in all the time, like Tom Hopkinsburg, who's always here. Scott, you've been logging in all the time. Khalil, you log in all the time. Tom Rogers, you obviously log in all the time. And there's loads of others I'd like to do shout outs to. But thank you to you guys, because you guys always log on. I would love to be a guest on people's shows at any point. Absolutely. I would love to do that. I'm absolutely more than happy to do that about anything. Don't leave me. Final words about Tom Rogers. About Mr. Roger. Tom, well, you know what? I think it has to be a positive one, because ultimately this is obviously Tom's idea, this whole thing, and I think it's barreled like a freight train, and rightfully so. It's been a great idea, and there's been so many amazing people like yourselves who got involved in it, and massive credit. And I look forward to seeing it going to strength to strength. I am staying on as an advisor, obviously, but it's been great. And thank you to everyone for everything over this while. And yeah, it's as I said, it's not goodbye. It's see you later. And hopefully I can come on and abuse Tom in future shows. So you know what? For the last time, folks, pasta la pizza, and I will see you around.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.